Support for Swan Song is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. It's been quite a while since we last talked about a piece of WonderSwan software that is hard to categorize as an actual game, but this week's title, Meta Communication Therapy Nee Kiite, is a fabulous example of one of those, as it's much closer to being an asynchronous social networking app than anything else. It was developed by Yoshidayama Workshop, which is previously known for their work on the port of Puzzle Bobble, and published by Media Entertainment, which appears to be a publishing sublabel of Kagatek. It hit store shelves on March 23rd of 2000. To understand the pitch behind Meta Communication Therapy, look no further than its box art. Next to the game's mascot Yu is the phrase, "If we all link together, we can make new discoveries about our friendships." Which leads me to ask, do you remember Miitomo? Miitomo was the first of Nintendo's smartphone apps, launched alongside the My Nintendo service in March of 2016. In Miitomo, you would be prompted with various icebreaker questions whenever you checked into the app, and answering these questions would broadcast your answer to everyone in your friends list, leading to some nice discoveries and lots of memes. All of this was wrapped in a charming presentation based around the Nintendo Mii creator from the Wii and subsequent products. While the app was immensely successful in the weeks following its launch, reaching a user base of around 10 million users at its peak, ultimately much of the hype around the app fizzled out a few months later, and the app would be delisted just 2 years later. Well, Meta Communication Therapy Nee Kiite can be considered a distant ancestor to the Miitomo concept, but naturally at a much smaller scale. At a base level, Meta Communication Therapy is a very basic contacts manager which lets you keep people's nicknames, real names, phone number, and their relationship to you on your WonderSwan. Instead of interfacing with it like regular software, the entire user interface is framed as a conversation with the mascot character, Yu. Within your conversations with Yu, you're prompted to share information about your feelings towards people or report events that they were involved in. All sharing of information is done within rigid, predefined sentence structures. While today may be the age of AI language models, the year 2000 definitely wasn't, and if the software wants to act as though it understands who you were with, why you did something, or where you went, it needs to resort to only giving you very unambiguous ways to express that. Once that information is fed to Yu, your other friends with the WonderSwan can trade information with you with the help of a link cable, growing your database of knowledge. Once you've gotten that data on your personal WonderSwan, you can ask Yu questions about what your friends have been up to recently and learn more about them based on the data you've accumulated from all of your other friends with the software. Or participate in various quizzes and mini-games, such as a romantic compatibility test. While this video can't demo much, I do want to call out two of the most interesting features in Meta Communication Therapy. The first is Gossip Mail, which lets you write short text messages onto a bulletin board of sorts. When linking with another user, some of your gossip mail will propagate to their WonderSwan and vice versa, so with enough usage, you may get to see messages from complete strangers that work their way across multiple link sessions. The second, which was way ahead of its time, is privacy controls. You can choose to configure filters for what information is allowed to propagate to your friends over the link cable. It's not the most intuitive interface to do so, but it's definitely interesting to see them there given how pivotal privacy controls would become in the Facebook era. This is actually the first WonderSwan release I can think of to have a massive link cable recommended badge on its cover, and honestly I think they blew it by not including one in the box because the software is barely usable without it. It's very hard to even access the intended experience of Meta Communication Therapy without someone else to share the experience with, and that's probably why so little has been written about it online, much less anything positive. On paper, all of the features in Meta Communication Therapy are usable even without connecting to another device, but many of the features won't even work unless you have a significant amount of data on hand. So, as a solo user, it just becomes a really awkward way to query for information you should already know about your friends because you're the one who put it there. And if you put yourself in the shoes of someone who bought into this at the time, even if you had 2 or 3 other people you knew who owned Meta Communication Therapy, a WonderSwan, and a link cable, you would still need to be pretty heavy users to get any enjoyment out of this at all. I will say that in its original context, it's possible to imagine some scenarios in which it could be a neat idea, but I feel like its marketing really isn't helping here. Remember that this shipped in March of 2000. This is almost a year and a half before 3G cellular networking would become readily available in Japan. So while that would explode in popularity over the coming years and Japan would beat the rest of the world to the always connected lifestyle that defines the modern day, meta-communication therapy was still released in a period where an asynchronous offline way of keeping up with friends didn't yet seem like an antiquated idea. I think the main audience for something like this would have been kids and teenagers, but it's really hard to think of that demographic gravitating to something that sounds as clinical and dull as meta-communication therapy. There's a real missed opportunity here by not marketing explicitly to kids and teenagers and giving the whole thing a more attractive name and art style, but even I don't think that would be enough. If Miitomo couldn't sustain a regular user base when it was free, had over 10 million users, could rely on ubiquitous networking, had better presentation, and significantly less awkward text input, what are the hopes that this would ever do any better? Especially when it was stuck on the WonderSwan, which was far from being popular. This product was doomed to fail, and it's definitely an interesting artifact of the time, but it's not really worth anyone's time today.